Back in 2018, Sean O'Brien wrote, "Trump is our enemy. Look at the man's actions. A war is being waged on workers, and Hoffa is not only refusing to fight, he won't even answer the bell."
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
So, Sean O'Brien, the international president of the Teamsters, he, something that people don't really understand about him, and haven't understood about him since he was elected, is that he was not a reformer. He was not a reformer. He was not a member of the Teamsters for a Democratic Union. He never was. In fact, he was always very antagonistic to the Teamsters for a Democratic Union. So antagonistic, in fact, that that there were charges brought against him within the union of his abuse of some TDU members and physical threats of violence against some TDU members is my recollection. And so their marriage, the marriage of the TDU to Sean O'Brien, was something of an odd marriage. But what happened was that, Sean O'Brien kind of saw the way that the winds were blowing. He knew that, that Jimmy Hoffa Jr. was in, kind of dire straits after overriding the vote of the contract, in the contract negotiations right before that election that happened in 2022, I believe it was, is when Sean O'Brien was elected. And so Jimmy Hoffa Jr. was in such dire straits, in fact, that he did not run. He appointed a successor, basically, to run in his stead and be, the legacy of, that kind of grouping of Teamsters officials, kind of the old guard. And so I think Verma was his name. And so Sean O'Brien and also I think, to be fair, I do think that Sean was also upset at the negotiations at UPS under Jimmy Hoffa Jr. I think that there was some kind of like a Sean Fain kind of thing that he felt like that it was just too much. There was too much being given away at the table and really for nothing. And so Sean O'Brien was, not happy with this, and he had some ambitions, and he saw an opening, and so he partnered with the Teamsters for a Democratic Union and ran against the Jimmy Hoffa Jr. Successor and won. And won, pretty handily, actually, more handily than Sean Fain did. Sean Fain's election was actually rather close. I don't think that Sean O'Brien's was. It's been a minute since I've looked at the results. But so, I think if you understand that, I do think that while still very confusing, his actions over the last few months become a little bit less confusing. He was never, kind of a dyed-in-the-wool, true blue reformer. He was, part of the old guard, pretty decidedly, and he still wasn't happy with it. And so, with that context, Sean O'Brien spoke to the Republican National Convention on day one, and the day one of the Republican National Convention was a very strange kind of affair. There was a pro-abortion sex worker who spoke. There was a Teamsters union leader. There were rappers. It was just a very kind of bizarre assortment of people at a RNC event. And he spoke, and some of the speech was fine. It wasn't, it was too nationalistic for me, frankly, the whole thing, but there were some good stuff in there. And, the thing that is telling about the audience is that, and there was a lot of not good stuff in there. And so the not good stuff is actually what got huge applauses from the audience. And the things that were good, like when he was lambasting Amazon, when he was lambasting right to work, when he was saying that labor laws in this country are too weak, that it's not fair that companies can just fire workers without any real penalty. When he was talking about those things, the audience was either silent or confusedly kind of a little bit clapping, right? But when he threw some red meat out there, like talking about how he was getting criticism from both the right and the left. Oh no. And he threw it out there for them to boo at the left, who were instrumental in getting him to the presidency of the Teamsters. If we're thinking about the left wing of the Teamsters, the TDU certainly have occupied that space, at least in the past. So that was gross. It was also gross the amount of credit that he gave J.D. Vance and Josh Hawley for some of their quote-unquote pro-labor moves. And also, when he did, any criticism that he had of the Republicans was couched in this both sides kind of stuff. He never singled out the Republicans as a whole or any single Republican for criticism. Never once did that. And that's just really kind of not acceptable, I don't think, if you are going to be, trying to educate people about what's going on. For the Butch Lewis Act, $40 billion for Teamster pensions, just for the Teamster pensions. It was more than that, but the other payments were kind of dispersed. But $40 billion for Teamster pensions, not a single member of the Republican caucus in the Senate voted for it. Not a single one. Not Josh Hawley. None of them. None of these people voted for it. The Warehouse Worker Protection Act. No Republican sponsors, including Josh Hawley. Josh Hawley is not a sponsor of the Warehouse Worker Protection Act. And, J.D. Vance, there was a potential Kroger strike, or maybe there was a Kroger strike. I'm having trouble remembering it at this time, but there were people that were asking him about it, and he refused to comment on it. He wasn't interested in supporting workers in his state, in Ohio, who worked for Kroger, because he didn't really see them as the white, construction hard hat wearing types that he's interested in being perceived as supporting.
Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate.
And so, it's just not good political education. The speech itself was not. And so then you kind of have to think a little bit about the justifications for the speech, like why was he doing it? And I have always been, I'm probably one of the more sympathetic people that you could get to this idea about speaking at the RNC. I think in particular because it was my idea to have this radio program on a conservative radio station, right? And so I understand the premise of wanting to speak to, being willing to speak to anybody. And I'm willing to speak to anybody, basically, right? I'm willing to go on and talk on any show or to any person on any platform and whatever. But you do have to think about why people are inviting you there and what they are expecting you to say. And then you have to think about what you are saying and what is the effect of what you're saying. And there was a local union president that reached out to me that told me that he had members coming up to him, asking him questions, not a Teamster, asking him questions about the Sean O'Brien speech with basically kind of the implication that are Republicans moving towards unions? Are Republicans maybe better for unions or something close to as good for unions as Democrats are? Is there really a genuine realignment happening? And that is the effect. That's the effect, right? Nobody is coming away from Sean O'Brien's speech understanding that not a single Republican supported pensions for Teamsters. Not a single person is going to come away from that speech understanding that. Not a single person is going to come away from that speech, understanding that Republicans don't support the Warehouse Worker Protection Act. They're not going to understand that none of them support the PRO Act. That J.D. Vance actually specifically said the reason that I'm not going to support the PRO Act is because unions support Democrats too much. And it's like, well, that's why, right? That's why. We can say we like it or we don't, or we agree with it or we don't, but the reason that unions primarily support Democrats is not because unions just love Democrats. It's because, or union members love them. It's because Republicans want to destroy unions. The vast majority of them, basically all of them, want to destroy unions. They want to destroy us. And so nobody's going to come away from Sean O'Brien's speech understanding that. It's just not something that they would come away understanding. And actually what the effect is, I think, is beneficial for Trump and the RNC and their appeals to unions and working people and labor specifically, but not on any material basis.
Mm-hmm.
It's not on any. They're not promising to do anything real. They're not. There's no promises. And in fact, also in his speech, something that I was looking for, something that I was hoping to hear, was laying out a program under which that people must minimally meet to get a Teamsters endorsement. And there was not a single red line that Sean O'Brien had. There was nothing. There was nothing saying that we will not endorse people who don't support the PRO Act. We will not endorse people who don't do this or that or the other thing. He had a litany of like some good things and some not good things, but there were no red lines. There was no program for getting the support of the Teamsters. It was really, really, it was really disappointing. It was really disappointing. And in the fallout of that, this is even more disappointing. In the fallout of that, Rick Smith, who is another union radio host, and he has a much bigger audience than we do. He has a much bigger audience than us. I think he's on the radio in like New York and LA and places like that. He speaks to, he has and he's on TV, he's on like cable television. And he's been critical of Sean O'Brien's overtures to Donald Trump, publicly. But, it's been like a respectful disagreement. He's just been laying out that I disagree with Sean O'Brien's political positioning here. And Rick Smith, it is also worth noting, is a working Teamster. He is not a full-time radio pro. He does the show like we do. He's a working Teamster. He still drives a truck. And then in the afternoons, he does a daily radio program, which is, really just kind of awesome. And it's a crime, frankly, that no union or no grouping of unions has been willing to basically write him $100,000 check so that he can do it full time, given the amount of success that he's seen. Because it really is like far and away above what we've been able to do here. And so it's just really, he does a really good thing. I disagree with him. I think some politically, I think he's like kind of like an MSNBC kind of lib kind of thing, but that's fine. People, I'm fine having political disagreements with people and recognizing their value. Rick Smith I believe, does a valuable thing. Well, the Teamsters have ended their almost 20-year sponsorship of the Rick Smith Show.
Oh, I see.
Teamsters have been sponsoring the Rick Smith Show for 20 years. 19 years. And now they're not. Because Rick Smith disagreed with his international president. And before the move was actually made to pull the sponsorship of the Teamsters from the Rick Smith Show, Sean O'Brien did publicly threaten this implicitly. He said that, Rick Smith needs to publicly apologize or, quote, risk his good standing with his union or risk his positive relationship with his union, which is just a really kind of gross thing to say, I think. And so that's what's happened. And it's also, worth pointing out that this is just a complete 180-degree reversal of where Sean O'Brien was, 6 years ago. Back in 2018, Sean O'Brien wrote on Facebook, quote, "Make no mistake, Trump is our enemy. We must take our partisan emotions out of it and look at the man's actions. Trump supports national right to work. His NLRB has waged a war on policies protecting organizing, collective bargaining, and they have rewritten labor law in favor of employers. Like Obama, the job growth that Trump brags about is in the low-wage service sector or gig economy. And his tax bill was simply a $1 trillion gift to corporations. A war is being waged on workers, and Hoffa
is not only refusing to fight, he won't even answer the bell. So here he is criticizing Hoffa Jr., not for playing footsie with Trump, not for being like nicey nice, not for speaking at the RNC, but just not fighting loudly enough.
Right.
Going back to his Facebook post, Teamsters should never be divided by what party or candidate we as individuals support. Here's another thing. He's taking they're stopping the sponsorship of Rick Smith despite his stated position that Teamsters should never be divided by what party or candidate we as individuals support. Rick Smith should be able to have a different position on whether or not we should play footsie with Donald Trump and the Republicans and still be able to stay in good standing of the Teamsters. It should be about who supports us. Teamster members deserve better. We deserve better. Now he's referring again to Hoffa. We deserve better than Hoffa. We refuse to remain silent as Trump dismantles all we have fought for. Real Teamsters aren't scared to speak up, and they aren't scared of a fight.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.